always paid.
You said you've been married to your wife 18 years and she ain't never paid what?
I've been married to my wife for 18 years, going on 19 years.
Blue
My wife has
fellas.
never paid a mortgage payment. She's never paid a gas bill, electric bill. She's never paid a cable bill. She's never had to pay insurance for her cars. I pay for all that. But that's what a fucking man does for his family. I'm not on no pedestal behind it, but that's what a man does. A man takes care of his family. My wife shouldn't have to worry about a goddamn mortgage payment. She doesn't have to worry about the lights being on, gas being on, food in the motherfucking refrigerator. She don't pay for food. She don't pay for none of that. That's my motherfucking job. Understand me? You don't have to be on a pedestal to do that shit. That's what a man do, and a man don't brag about that shit. I'm not bragging at all, but that's what a fucking man does. A man that got 8 children and 12 grandchildren.
Say it again.
Okay.
And I've never been under one child support order in my life.
And you take care of all of them. You do for
and
all
I
of
do
them.
for all my kids. Whenever they need me, all they gotta do is call their daddy, and I'm right there. So if you meet a motherfucking nigga that can't treat you the way your father treats you, you don't need that motherfucker.
Oh! Mouthful
Hello,
said,
good fucking bye.
Mouthful said, goddammit.
Okay.
Mouthful said.
Say that shit, MG.
Mouthful said.
Say that.
That's what I'm talking about.
Why you need a motherfucker? Why do you need a motherfucker that can't do for you, can't do more for you than your own father? I set the fucking standard.
That's right. Amen.
If a nigga can't do more than what your father do for you, you don't fucking need him. Why you need a man that can't do? If my dad can do that shit, nigga, I don't need you.
That's what I tell my
Fuck
daughter.
that. Your father set the standard, and a lot of niggas set the standard so fucking low, they fuck their girls up. You set that standard that low, that fucks your girls up. Because then they go out there and go for any shit. You gotta set that standard fucking high, right here. So she'll be like, I don't want a nigga that's not gonna treat me as good as my father. I can call my dad, and I don't give a fuck where. I can be on the goddamn moon. Dad, I'm on my motherfucking way.
That's right.
And y'all know that.
Amen.
Y'all can be anywhere on this on God's green earth. As long as I'm above goddamn ground. You call me and say, Daddy, help me. Motherfucker, before you drop the goddamn phone, I'm standing right there. What you need, baby?
That's a damn
I'm
man.
like, this is
friend.
why I love my fucking father.
Yeah, y'all
That's
got
what
the
that shit
best
about.
father in the world.
That's what that shit about.
trying to
And I'm
tell
gonna tell you again,
They
it's
go
not about
nowhere
being on the
with
fucking
him.
pedestal.
It's
not about being on the pedestal. It's not about somebody telling you how good you are. Because here's the thing. I don't need a motherfucker to tell me I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Understand me? They talk about women that take care of their kids and there's no dad there and all that type of shit. Put the woman on the pedestal for doing your fucking job as a goddamn man. But when I do what I'm supposed to do, nigga, you ain't gotta praise me to do what the fuck I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to do that. You don't gotta, oh, he great. No, you don't. I don't need to be on a motherfucking pedestal because I'm doing what the fuck I'm supposed to do for a life I brought into this world. That shit crazy. It's crazy. Niggas want to get praised because they pay a child support payment. I pay this. You want to be on a motherfucking pedestal because you send a goddamn check, but your kid don't never fucking see you. A goddamn check don't go to the basketball game. A check don't go to the school to see how good you do. A check don't help you with goddamn homework, nigga. You provided a check. The fuck is that?
Yeah.
Your kid want to see you, nigga.
That's right. You stay on a whole.
Any nigga with a dick can make a baby. It take a real motherfucker to be a father.
Amen.
What up, fam? It's your favorite cousin, your favorite uncle, your favorite brother, your favorite father, your favorite nephew, your best friend's best friend. It's me, Dr. Larry, and welcome to Living For You, the YouTube channel. This is where we come and we relax and we unwind and we connect, but we also learn and we grow from one another. My subscribers, I like to say thank you. Those of you who are faithfully here have been faithfully here all throughout this year. And to those of you who are new, once again, I'm Dr. Larry. If you want to know more about me, you can go to www.liveforyoucoaching.com. That's www.liveforyoucoaching.com. That is my business. I'm a life coach, spiritual life coach, amongst other things. You can find out more about me there. Or you can follow me on social media at Dr. Larry Smith on both Instagram and on Facebook, or Dr. Larry Smith PhD on Twitter. So there's ways to connect. Contact me. Let's get some things going. If you need coaching, I'm here for that too. But I wanted to jump right into this one because I don't want it to go into a two-parter because this one was deep. This is what we've been doing for the last few times here is we've been doing a kind of review from a life coach's perspective of Iyanla Vanzant Fix My Life. And I've told you guys I love Iyanla Vanzant. She's an inspiration to me. She's great, and she's good at what she do. And she had her hands full with this one. That video you saw at the beginning was a father proudly declaring to his daughters how a man is supposed to treat a woman, what a man is supposed to do, a father's responsibility, a dad's responsibility, a husband's responsibility. And that video went viral. It had over 100 million views. And it took off, and people were rooting for him, saying that's what a real man is, and passing it around. And it became very much a question in many people's minds. Was this what a man's supposed to be, or is this a little bit too archaic and old-fashioned? Whatever the case may be, it went viral. Over 100 million views. Well, that was the family that was on Iyanla Fix My Life this past episode. And let's just say the video there where he's airing out the dirty laundry, and actually that's the name of the episode, where he's airing out his family business, that is kind of an interesting non-telling of the full story, right? It gives it from his perspective, and it kind of gives it a very narrow scope. So when we see in the episode and we learn from them, we learn a lot of things about this family well beyond that viral video. Iyanla asked the question, what happens when a family airs out their dirty laundry in public? The father had over, like I said, over 100 million views, but it was not what it seemed, right? He seemed like the great father, the great husband, all of this stuff, everything was in line and it was just working and functioning, and it really wasn't what it really was. And so what happened was Iyanla wanted to deal with the family, and she had a lot of them. She had the father, she had a son, she had the mother, and she had four daughters, a set of twins, and she had an older a daughter from another marriage, and she also had all the kids. It was a blended family because most of the kids were from another marriage, except for the two youngest, the youngest daughter and the son. Nevertheless, she wound up bringing Dr. Steve Perry. And Dr. Steve Perry is a good kind of psychologist, but he's also an educator. He started schools in New York. I admire him too. I think he's a really, really great influence on young black adults. So she got him to deal with the males, and she worked on the females. And she also got with him, let him be with the father as he watched the engagements and interactions between her and his daughters and wife, and of course between them and Iyanla, and of course between them and themselves. And so the family is in a lot of trouble as we learn, as we go further into this situation. Because the father, even though he appeared to be a good father in that viral video that we seen, he actually commits a lot of kind of verbal abuse and other abuse against his family. Verbal violence from his father to the children, to the wife, and so forth. But he has no idea that this toxic behavior is so heavy and so pretty much destructive to his family structure. He's really an old school soul, you know. The man runs the household, children are to fear the parent, the man takes care of everything, the wife obeys and walks at the side of the husband, and so forth. And so, like I said, Iyanla wanted Dr. Perry to deal with him. So she sets up a camera, and then that's when she begins to go and bring in the members of the family. But she starts with him first. She deals with the father first. And so before anything gets going, she asks each member of the family what they're here for. And they all have their different perspectives. Jordan, who is the youngest, Jayton, who is the youngest daughter, she says she wants to air out her relationship with her family. Mr. Mark says he noticed that there's division in the family, and that's why he wrote the letter. He is the one who wrote the letter to Iyanla in order to fix that, to mend that broken relationship in his family. He feels like there is a lack of respect from his children, and he also feels as though he wants to clear up some things that hadn't really cleared up, and he also feels like his wife isn't on the same page with him as when it comes to disciplining the children and taking care of other things in the house. What I hear from him, and this is something I wrote down as I was watching it, he talked about everybody. He talked about his children not having respect. He talked about things being broken and divided. He talked about his wife not being on the same page. He never mentioned anything about himself directly. So from this, without Miss Iyanla even saying it, I went ahead and already noticed that he had no ability to self-reflect. And that is a key component to human development, that you're able to go back and see you from a past moment, whether it's a minute, an hour, a day, a year, or so, and reflect as to your development and your awareness and your ability of improvement since then. But he couldn't do that. Then we get Ashley, who's a 32-year-old daughter. She's kind of they all have different mothers apparently, but she's another one. She says she doesn't want the problem. She said, I just don't want to deal with it anymore. I'm over everything that we've been through, all of these family issues. I just don't want to deal with them no more. Then you have the twins. One of the twins, I want to say, is Shanae. And she basically says that she just wants to address things. She said they all live in different places. I think she said some live in the Carolinas, Virginia, Tennessee, I think other places, and they have these issues that they never address when things go on. They just kind of go off to their respective corners, and then things blow up when they're together, and then when they separate, they don't talk about it. Typical family drama, right? Especially families who live distance away from each other, not spending the time to deal with the issues and just having the issues and then going off to let it simmer, fester, and to become bigger issues later on. The wife, Jamelia, she said she just wants to air out the poor communication between all of them. She said they all have poor communication from the father on down to the youngest son, and she wants to deal with that situation. Now, Jordan is the only male child in the family that is present. There's another one who's not there, but he wants to air out the beef, and Ms. Iyanla asked him to clarify it for her, and he just basically says he wants to deal with the issues in the family. The things that they haven't been dealing with, he wants to air that stuff out and put it out there on the table. Then Janie, who is another twin, the other twin, she pretty much says the same thing as her twin, and everybody's been saying. They want to air out the entire family. They want to put it all out and deal with it. And what I was listening to, as I was hearing all the other family members outside of the father say air things out, I'm reminded of the video that I played at the beginning. The dad put it all out there from his perspective and what he felt from his emotional state and from his thought process. But the rest of the family didn't get a chance to speak their words, speak their truth, and speak to what it really was, or to respond to what, in their minds, the situation really was. And so this was their moment to all air everything that needed to be aired out. And so what Iyanla does is she dismisses everybody first, because she wants, she likes to talk to each person to get their perspective, and that helps to bring clarity to the entire situation. Because what happens in family situations is everybody has their own perspective. Even if there are people who agree and share the same perspective, their version of it or their interpretation of it could be completely different. Can't get it out there. And so it's important to hear everybody's perspective so you can get clarity to what the situation is from pretty much, and put it together based on that. And that's a good lesson for those of you who want to coach and who want to be group coaches. As a group coach, it is important that you listen actively to everyone around in the group to try to get a sense of what you need to do for the entire group, which is a good lesson from Miss Iyanla, of course. And so she talks to Mr. Mark, the father, and she says, you have been acting like the throne. She shows him a throne with a bunch of words, things like being vulnerable and being approachable and being loving and being kind, and just a whole bunch of characteristics that she believed make up a good king who is qualified and who has the right to sit into the throne. So she shows him the throne, and she said, you've been acting like that throne is yours, but you have not been doing the work like you're required to do to sit on that throne, right? You the man of the house, you the king, but you ain't been doing what a king does to deserve to be up on that throne. Very powerful visual, very powerful analogy. Really brought that thought in his head at the beginning of this process. And so she puts the laundry in his hands. I noticed that too. And in many ways, kind of symbology, or in a symbolic way of saying, this dirty laundry that your family got going on, it's on your lap, because it all starts and ends with you. And so she says, in order for a man to claim the throne in the family kingdom, there are some traits that he must practice and have. These must be a part of who he is. And the traits, like I said, were traits that she had leading up to the throne, which were things like honesty, transparency, trustworthiness, self-control. All of these things, vulnerability, all of these things and so much more are characteristics that a king has to be the king of his kingdom. And she said, so many men think that they are the king, but they are not. They are not, because many of them, in many ways, had not been taught. And we begin to find out that that's Mr. Mark's story, as with many of our stories, partially mine too, and a lot of different people. We don't really have the influences of what it means to be a man. We see rap videos, we see movies, we see people out there in the streets, we see educators if we have educators, but for a lot of us, especially men of color, like myself, we don't have a lot of male educators that look like us to reflect what black male masculinity and black manhood looks like from a teacher's perspective. You know, most of us don't get our first black teacher until college, and some of us don't even get it up that far. And so it's a difficult thing. So many of us come to our conclusions on manhood from so many bits and pieces of things that we can find throughout our walks in lives. And that was the same thing with Mr. Mark. He didn't have a father figure. And so he saw his job was to protect his mother and his sisters, to protect the women in his family. It didn't go into further details, but it seems like he was the only son, and that happens often in that regard, in which the only son feels as though it is his job to protect the women in the family. And so he thought that that's the role of a man in a family. Protect those in your kingdom. Protect those and be the protector and the provider of those in your kingdom. And so he said, and so Mr. Iyanla said, but your kingdom's in ruin. So your way of doing it ain't working for the kingdom. It ain't for the glory of the kingdom, because the kingdom is falling apart. Well, he says this is just how he's been raised. This is all he knows. He's only giving what he knows. And that's another lesson within the lesson, right? That most of our parents, most of us who, if we are parents, we can only give what we know. So if you're never taught nurturing as a male, which most men aren't taught how to be nurturers because of societal stuff, crap, you're not going to be a nurturer. If you're not taught how to be affectionate because of societal crap, most men aren't taught affection. All of that is going to be a reflection of how you do your children. And you're not going to be able to give them what you've never been taught. And that's just what it is. And so she said, if you're the king, then why is your kingdom in ruins? What's going on? And he had no clue. He had no clue. He didn't know. He didn't know why his kingdom was in ruins. He was acting out on autopilot, had no idea, just living the way that he was taught. He said he loves his wife, he loves his family, he loves all of that, but he just don't understand why things are falling apart. And Miss Iyanla asked him, well, she said first that the king can't do anything without the wise counsel of the queen. Are you making space for the queen to be able to do that? And that was a very deep question for a married couple, for any couple, that are you making room for your partner, for the other person that is supposed to be coinciding on this throne with you, to be able to engage and have a part in the kingdom, in building this thing? Because if not, you're missing a very powerful half to what needs to happen to in your kingdom. Well, he said, no, in so many ways. He said sometimes the thug, or he said sometimes the not so good person comes out, and he said that's pretty much what he presents sometimes to his wife, and that person isn't someone who allows for the wise counsel of a queen or anybody else to come into this man's space of making decisions for his family. You kind of see that in the video too, that he seemed very domineering in what he expected and what he demanded from his family, just from the video jump off. Seeing the backstory, hearing the story behind it, you kind of start to understand bits and pieces as to why he even projected and spoke and acted the way that he acted in the video. Even though it seems strong, there's something behind that strength. And so, and he said, Mr. Iyanla said, well, you've got to be willing to do something else, And so we go into the situation with his youngest son. And like I said, the youngest son seems to be one of the only other males in the family that were present, but there's another male, but these are the only ones. It's him and another. And he actually got into a fight, a pushing match, a physical altercation with his youngest 17-year-old son. What happened was the youngest 17-year-old son got upset with him. They had a disagreement, and he wound up pushing his father. And that was just kind of, okay, you've pushed the king. You do not come into the kingdom and push the king, because I run this. I run this. You know, you're supposed to fear the king. I brought you into this world, I can take you out mentality. We talked about that several times, how that comes up in many, many, many families, especially in my community, but I'm sure it happens in many other communities as well. And so Iyanla said, sir, I didn't tell you, but your paradigm, your way of thinking, your paradigm is out of date. It is completely out of date, because you think the king is the center of the universe and that everything should revolve around his way, how he does it, and that's the way it is. And she said, nope, that's out of date. She said, you got to get that together. She said, you've based everything you've said, nothing, because he talked about how he provides, and he talked about how he takes care of his family and how he protects his family. And she said it very clear to where she cut to the core with it. She said, you have based everything you are by what you do. And that is how you show up in your family. That is how you show up in your family. And so she passes him on to Dr. Perry, who is there to give him a male's perspective and to help him work on his thinking and to help him work on his temper and whatever else he needs to work on to be able to clearly hear, because hearing is very important, to be able to clearly hear what's going to be said in front of him and what he needs to do in order to grow as a person. Because it's more importantly than even as a father, even as a husband, that he grew as a person throughout this process. And I actually started to see some of that. We'll touch on that towards the end. And so then Miss Iyanla goes and talks to the queen, the queen, right? And she goes to speak to Miss Jamila. And she talks to him, and she says that when she met him, he's all kinds of things. He's a loving guy, he's a provider, he has a gentle spirit, he has all of that. But the person that she has met most of the time has been the thug, you know, that he talked about. She's met that person pretty much the majority of their relationship together. And she said they didn't have love going into the relationship. It was more so that it was a sexual relationship, as that happens many times. And in this sexual relationship, she wound up getting pregnant. And instead of aborting the baby, she wanted to keep the baby, because for her, abortion wasn't an option. And so him being a stand-up guy, he was like, well, if we have a kid together, we might as well go ahead and get married. And they got married. But they didn't love each other, or at least according to her, she didn't love him. She actually fell in love a little bit after they were married. She grew to love him. And that commonly happens in relationships. The fire seems to be lit at first, but the love comes a little late for some people and others. You can be patient and wait for it to come for the other person, because their actions may not show love unless they're able to pretend like they can, apparently as she was, or whatever. And so when Iyanla asked her about the video, she said he felt validated because people were liking the videos, they were sharing the video, it went over 100 million views and it went viral, so it made him feel validated. And really what was happening in the video is you saw a father teaching his daughters how men should treat their wives and what kind of man to look for. And the interesting thing is Dr. Perry pointed that out to Mark, Mr. Mark. He said, I see all this in the videos. I see that you're trying to be a good father and teach your daughters what a good man looks like. But what we ultimately see as well in that video is a dad, a man, trying to provide something that he never had. And it hit the mark directly, because you can tell it resonated in Mr. Mark's spirit, that he was trying to give something he ain't never had. He was trying to be the man that his father or the men in his mama's life weren't. And a lot of us fall into that trap. Remember I said just a second ago that we learn how to be a man from bits and pieces of things throughout our life. And so in his bits and pieces that he got, he didn't see good examples, so he wanted to be he wanted to be more than what he saw. And so he focused on being a man in many instances, according to Dr. Perry, but he didn't focus on the human part. He didn't focus on the loveness and the kindness and the vulnerability and the consideration and all the stuff that makes him human. He just was more so trying to be a man. And that was a really big, so in many ways, Dr. Perry said, while you were on that video talking to your daughter, in many ways, you were trying to convince yourself of that. That was powerful. It was powerful because because sometimes in our conscience, I say it directly, even still here, when I am talking to you guys and I'm having these discussions with you, a lot of it also I am putting right back into my spirit and feeding my own soul. I embrace it as I do my work to help. I'm also helping myself, so that's why I love what I do. But anyway, and so Iyanla kind of talked to the wife and was basically saying, and it got her to say in many ways that everything that goes on in the house is transactional. I give you, you give me. That's how things work. You do this, I do this. If you don't do this, I withhold this, and I get angry if you don't live up to your deal of the transaction. When Dr. Perry goes back to Mr. Mark, he talks to Mr. Mark, and he sees his son as a reflection of who he is, that kid who doesn't have what he needs, and he's trying to live out of that. And so he's just talking and just going. Mr. Mark is just going. Dr. Perry has to stop him and tell him to breathe. Because when you're always ready, when you're always rageful, you're missing the point. So take a time. You might even miss what's being said to you, and you might even miss the fact that you might not even be the issue. But the fact of the matter is you're spending too much time on the ready to go, on the defense, on the fire, instead of just sitting back, relaxing, breathing, and then responding. And so he said, listen not to rebut, but listen to hear. That is what you do when you're listening. You're not listening to come up with your answers every time. You're listening to hear. He says, so don't be so rushed to rage, which is the common go-to for a lot of men. A lot of us don't learn how to demonstrate emotions. And we see this in crime in different communities. We see this in other ways, in business and other instances, how men respond in a rageful manner. This is where that comes from. We're not taught how to just rationalize through our emotions, or we're taught not to even feel our emotions, and so therefore we react out of rage many times. And so the wife went back and to Iyanla and the wife, Miss Jamil, and we find out that she did address it, all of these feelings that she had and how he was treating her in their marriage and whatever. But there was a breakdown because he actually physically attacked her. She was physically attacked, and she said from that point on, that's when she realized that she didn't want to be in this anymore, but she just stayed there numbingly in the relationship, kind of dealing with the transactions. And so Miss Iyanla asked her, are you open to the possibility that your marriage can be healed? Because if not, you got to let it go, because you have to be open to the process and possibility of your marriage being healed. And Miss Jamil says she's tired, but she loves her husband, but she wants to see changes. She wants to see changes. And so, Iyanla keeps pulling it out, and finally she goes and asks her, well, are you in love with him? Do you want to be with him? Because if it's just about the money, and if you're just sleeping with him, and you don't really love him, then it's transactional, then that makes you a hoe. And, that's Miss Iyanla hitting the point real hard, sometimes in a tough way. But what she was saying was, you're ultimately just living, kind of just transactionally engaging, but you're not really in love with this man. Then you're really not doing anything other than hoeing. Excuse my language. She said, if he broke your heart, you got to tell him. If that's what it is, then you got to tell him if he broke your heart. And she said, do this for me and write this down so that you can think about this as you're in your own time. She said, when I think about staying married, I feel ... When I think about leaving my marriage, I feel ... And when I tell the whole truth, what would that sound like? ... So while all of this is going on, Dr. Perry is working with Mr. Mark on active listening. How to actively listen to his daughters, how to actively listen to his son, how to actively listen to his wife. And so at this moment, he tells him, here's your practice. And so he's watching his daughters' interaction with each other as they meet with Miss Iyanla. And so they all come in. Then next thing you know, it gets to be a transaction where the daughters are fighting each other. The twins want to fight Ashley. The youngest daughter is just looking kind of perplexed as what's going on. They're cursing each other out. Ashley feels a certain way about the twins. She feels like they always want to make it about them. They're cursing, they arguing, calling each other out of their names, getting ready to fight. And Iyanla has to take Ashley out because it's getting to be too much of a toxic situation, because this actually looks like they are strangers in the streets about to tear each other up instead of sisters. You know? And it just begins to be this crazy situation. And so Mr. Iyanla takes Ashley out, and as Mr. Mark is watching all this chaos, he feels like he could have stopped it. Like, if I was there, they would have had more respect for me. They would not have done all that in front of me. You know, I don't allow them to do that and whatever. And we find out that Ashley really is just hurt. All of this anger and aggression is coming out from a place of hurt. She just wants a relationship with her dad. So she's not angry at anybody. She really is just a broken-hearted girl who feels betrayed by her father, and she really just wants to rebuild that relationship with her father. The twins think it's because she's jealous, and so does the youngest daughter, but for the most part, that's not what it is. It's just she just wants a relationship with her father. And so Miss Iyanla goes back in, and she asks the girls, the twins, a very important question. How do you justify calling your sister those names, the B word and the other words and all kinds of things? More importantly, how do you justify calling another black woman, not even your sister, just another black woman, those names? How do you honor your father by doing that to each other? And they basically say, well, we get it from him. Daddy does that. And we've already kind of felt that. And Mr. Iyanla said, I believe that, because we've already met Mr. Mark. We've already seen how he engages. And grandmama does that. So his mama did that to him. So this behavior has been normalized. Toxic aggression and poisonous words towards each other, even your siblings, have become a normal in this family. And so now you have an issue where we're getting more layers to this situation. And so Iyanla tells them, you're not mad, you're hurt, but you're displaying it. And one of the twins, Jamila, I forgot her name, Cherie, I think, she was like, well, I'm just keeping it real. You can't tell me not to say it, because that's just not me keeping it real. And Miss Iyanla said, that's not you keeping it real. That's you speaking from a hurt place, as a hurt child. She said, you speak from hurt, and you guys speak all the time, but you don't know. And so Miss Iyanla says, you guys know how to speak, but you don't know how to communicate, right? And so she tries to get the twins to express the feeling. What are you feeling? And they basically said, the person that we want to address this with is our mother, and she's not here. And so Miss Iyanla sets up a pillow and says, pretend that's your mother. Tell her what you want to hear. And one of the twins just go in. I mean, just ripping her mother a new one, pretty much expressing exactly how she felt. And it's heartbreaking. It is completely heartbreaking that we see this. But she's just mad. And so Miss Iyanla says, your healing is in your forgiveness. If you can forgive your mama, then you can find your healing. And she said, your parents let you down. Those are the ones who hurt you, but you have to learn to forgive them for yourself. And then that's when she sets the parameters. You're not going to hurt each other anymore. This action is not going to happen anymore. That interaction that y'all just had, it's a wrap on that one, because that was toxic and just not working. And so she was like, but that's not real again. Well, that's not, no, that's from your heart. You are speaking out of hurt and not from your heart and from a place for your loved one. And so they decide that they're going to work it out, right? They're going to apologize. Miss Iyanla asks them to apologize, and they do. And then they come into this situation and they apologize. And she says, you all are in the same tribe. You all are in the same tribe. All of you are speaking from hurt. You all are in the same tribe. You're not against each other. So don't make yourselves against each other for your hurts. She said, because if you don't work together as the elders in this group, because the eldest one was really the one popping off the hardest, the oldest twin. She said, you're going to leave your youngest sister, the baby, open to somebody to come in and abuse and hurt her if y'all do not get this together. And then whoop, through the room went a reaction to that. And Miss Iyanla, of course, she pays attention, so she caught it. And we come to realize that every single one of his daughters had been abused and they had not said anything to their father or their mother, didn't say anything to their father because of how he responds, how dangerous it might be if he responds, and they rather protect him than see him go to jail. So they just held the sexual abuse that they all faced. Oh, Mr. Mark was mad. He was mad, and rightly so. However, your actions, right? Your actions created an environment where they couldn't even come to you to talk to you about somebody violating them. And a lot of parents put themselves in that same situation, that their child can't come and interact with them and tell them their full story out of fear of what might happen. And that comes to abuse, that comes to sexuality, that comes to mistakes that they make, that comes to choices that they want to make, all kinds of things. Parents don't sometimes open up themselves to allow their children to come in. And so they all started crying, and they were talking, and Miss Iyanla said, do you think that your tears are any saltier than her tears because y'all have different mothers? And they said no. They was like, so y'all share the same hurt. Y'all share the same hurt. And that led up to a barrel of pain on Mr. Mark. And he just really couldn't deal with the fact of that happening and that being that way. But they were afraid of his response. Now, I didn't want to do this into a two-parter, but it looks like I'm going to have to because it's so much information. I'm going to get this done this week, so we're going to have a two-parter to this because, like I said, this is such an intense story. Once again, just like our last story, Ms. Iyanla has been packing so much into these episodes that we're able to divide this into a two-parter because we still have to deal with the relationship between the son and the daughter, the husband and the wife, and we still have to bring this all together for some kind of healing. Nevertheless, we will be back here doing it, but I want you to just think of certain things. Like I said, because what's been a common trend that we've been seeing has been the father and the parents and how that relationship trickles down into the lives of the children. We've been talking about pathologies. We've been talking about mindsets and paradigms throughout all these episodes of Iyanla Fix Your Life. So we've been seeing a common thread. And I hopefully from those episodes, of you watching those episodes, but then also of you coming here and we having these open discussions about it, that you're able to start noticing some of the paradigms in your family or in your heart or in your mind. And you start to question them. And if you need help with them, seek the help you need. There are many therapists, life coaches. You can go to www.liveforyoucoaching and sign up for a free session called the Positive Me session, in which you're able to start to redevelop your mind. You can sign up for coaching. You can go one-on-one coaching. You can do whatever. But www.liveforyoucoaching.com, you can start to work on some of the paradigms if you're dealing with something. Don't just deal with it alone. That's the whole point. You are not alone. You have resources. Utilize the resources. Anyway, we will come back next time and we will wrap up this episode of Iyanla Fix My Life. Aaron got the dirty laundry, and we will talk more about it from a life coach's perspective. As I always said, you can follow me anywhere on social media. And I love you, and I'll see you in the next video, family.